Hi, Joellen. I know you like to talk about perennials.
Perennials, yes. One of my favorites. And we're going to talk about a bunch of perennials that do well
Okay.
in the ground, because perennials come back year after year,
Right.
and these last for years.
Okay.
So the first we're going to talk about is the hellebores.
Right.
They bloom first in February and clear through till April. They're all different kinds. Their blooms last a long time because it's cool out.
Right.
But they can be grown in zones 6 through 9. And it's also called the Lenten rose because it's blooming during Lent.
Okay.
So that's their claim to fame. And they have evergreen foliage, which
beautiful.
stays around all year long.
Okay.
Next, we're going to talk about peonies.
Yeah.
Peonies are in zones 3 through 8.
Ah.
And they bloom in the spring, probably, middle of the spring. Nice big blooms,
Yes, I like 'em.
gorgeous, very fragrant, all different kinds and colors. Does well. Then when the blooms are gone, it's got this nice bush of foliage that's there. So very nice plant.
Okay.
Next, Coreopsis.
Coreopsis. I like coreopsis.
There are
Yeah.
all kinds of Coreopsis, and the grandiflora and the verticulata are native. There's native forms of that, and there's a lot of new varieties that are based on these native forms. There's zones 4 through 9,
Wow.
and they are beautiful. Bloom in
They
the
are.
late spring to early summer. And I had one that bloomed almost all sporadically all summer long. So there's some really nice ones out there.
All right.
Cone flowers. Everybody knows cone flowers.
Yeah.
They have zones 5 through 8, which is good.
That is
And
good.
there's a new variety called Magnus that I think we planted that out in the family plot perennial butterfly garden.
Oh, nice.
And it is hardy to zone 3. So,
Wow,
that's really good.
That's pretty good.
They all have summer blooms, and they bloom for a long time in the summer. Then, of course, there are daylilies. Oh, my goodness. Whole societies of daylilies.
Okay.
Very easy to grow. Summer blooms, zones 3 through 10.
Wow.
So it's a very long
Yeah, it
range.
is.
Different heights, different colors. If you have enough daylilies, you probably have them blooming all summer long.
Sure.
All right, next we have hibiscus. And now, not just any hibiscus, the perennial hibiscus. So make sure it says perennial hibiscus. Most of them have fleshy stems that come up, and then they'll die back to the ground every year and come back up. And the hibiscus likes zones 5 through 9, and it blooms in the summer, and it'll bloom for a long time in the summer.
Okay.
The Rudbeckia, the Hirta, the perennial one. Black-eyed Susan is another common name for it. It's zones 4 through 9, and it blooms in the summertime. It's into the late summer sometimes too. So it's a good plant. And here's one that you don't hear a lot: catmint.
No.
Zones 4 through 8. It grows it spreads quite a bit. Grows about a foot tall. Has beautiful blue and purplish flower spikes on it. Very, very pretty.
So why is it called catmint?
Well, it's in the same family.
Okay.
This is the ornamental variety that I like, but this is the same family that they put the catnip with.
Okay.
So
Got it.
I don't have cats, so I don't know if it likes this particular one, but this was considered ornamental, and that's why I got it, because it's pretty.
Got it.
One thing that I like for everybody to have is some type of ornamental grass. I'm
I'm a big fan of ornamental
there's
grass.
all different kinds of the calyxes and the sedges and everything, but one that I know does really well in perennial gardens is one called Hamlin. It's a dwarf fountain grass, but I like it because it gives a different texture in the garden, and it has seed heads, little foxtail seed heads looking like in the latter part of the summer and into fall. So it's really pretty.
Okay.
Another one that I like is called sedum. All of the sedums, there are many, many sedums. They're dwarf and they're all different sizes. They bloom at all different times during the summer. My favorites are the fall blooming ones, which are Autumn Joy and Autumn Fire.
Okay.
Those two I like the best because they're blooming at a time when a lot of things have stopped blooming. That's why I like those. And of course, last to bloom in the season is our aromatic aster. And I'm not going to pronounce the scientific name to that because it's very difficult.
It is.
But it is zones 3 through 8.
Wow.
And, it can grow just all over the country. So we've got a lot of range of of perennials here, but all of them that we have talked about, you have something blooming from February clear through November.
Nice.
So, and not they may not all bloom at the same time.
Right.
They're sporadic, and that they all like the same kind of properties. I mean, they all like sun to partly shady area. They all like well drained and can take a little bit of drought if I forget to water them or if Mother Nature doesn't water them. Right. They're forgiving in that sense. Okay. So that's why I like all of them. And landscape value. There's all different textures and colors, so they do well together. Also, with these, I have the perennial garden. I don't forget there are bulbs that are perennial too.
I know you like bulbs.
And so daffodils. I mean, I didn't know we did a whole segment on daffodils. Right. There are so many different daffodils. They're one of the first things. We're heralders of spring, and they're blooming with the hellebores in the spring. Nice. You know, in the late winter. I like daffodils. They do really well. I recommend buying those as a perennial. And for a surprise, in the middle of the summer, the belladonna lilies, big, pink, gorgeous. They come up. They just make you smile because they come up and they surprise you, and they bloom, and they're big and gorgeous, and I like those. Yeah. As is the nerines that bloom then later, towards the beginning of fall. Late summer and into fall, you get the nerines that come up just suddenly. That the foliage comes up early in the spring because the foliage is up now, and then the foliage dies down, and these come up at different times throughout the season. So nice. I like all of that, and to fill in for a little bit of extra color, an annual here and there.
Just here and there.
Just here and there, because I mean you just got to tide you over it in case something else isn't blooming.
Wow. So something is blooming
almost all the time. Yeah, it comes
I like
up.
That.
And blooms all the time. And I wish I had had this information when I started, because it's taken me years to figure it out. But this is
That's good.
An easy way to do all that. And they will last for years. Like my peonies are my mother's. They're probably 50 to 60 years old.
So they can last that long.
They can last that long.
You have all of this plant material that you pretty much talked about today.
Yeah, I do.
Wow.
And it's fun to go out and use something new is blooming. Oh, look what's blooming now.
Right.
It's very nice. And I don't do a whole lot of fertilizing. I might fertilize in the spring.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
I do soil test every once in a while. Every 2-3 years, you do a soil test to make sure the pH is where it needs to be.
Sure.
And if you have any problems with it, like sometimes you move to a new place and you plant, it might be too wet or too shady.
Sure.
And so you got to change that around. But once you find the right place for it, this stuff just lives and lives and lives.
They thrive and survive. How about that? Any major problems that we need to know about?
Actually being too wet.
Being too wet, okay.
That would probably be the worst detriment, because these like to be well drained.
Okay.
So that's what they like. And being that they are perennials, and they'll die back, most of them, except for the hellebores, they don't. You're gonna have to cut them at some point.
Sure.
So you can either do that as they die, or you can do it in the spring in February, just before everything starts waking up, or you can do it at the end of the season, whichever you prefer.
Good deal. How about that? Yeah, so do your research, folks. Yeah, get some of these plants in your landscape.
Yes.
Yeah, blooms all season.
All season long.
I like that. Thank you, Joellen. That was good. I can tell you like talking about this.
I love them.
Thank you much. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please click the subscribe button below.